Hi everyone, thanks for joining my session today on org-dependent packages, packages for the masses, which kind of almost rhymes, but not quite. A little bit about me first. I'm Keir Bowden, I'm the CTO of BrightGen, and I'm better known in the community as Bob Buzzard. I've been working with Salesforce for over 12 years now, and I'm also a Salesforce MVP, which means I do a lot of these kind of presentations. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the sponsors, one of whom I work for, so that's nice, isn't it? So here's what we're going to cover today. First, an overview of packaging in general, and org-dependent packages in particular. An explanation of my sample scenario, paying particular attention to the org-dependent aspects. A demo and a look at some of the metadata markup. What you need to do in order to get set up to develop packages, because it's a little bit different. Some takeaways and lessons learned, because there's always something to learn. And finally, where you can go to find out some more information. So before we get into the detail of packages, I want to make sure that we all understand the term happy soup, which I think is a Salesforce invention. What this means is this is the collection of metadata in your Salesforce org, all your objects, your automation, your code, spanning all of the applications that your org supports. And most of these applications will have some degree of overlap through common objects, like accounts or objects or contacts. The happy soup may be hard to untangle with lots of applications sharing objects, fields within objects, methods in other Apex classes. And as I put at the end here, the happy soup often bears a strong resemblance to the big ball of mud anti-pattern. So anyone who's been around software development for a while is probably familiar with that. So here's a definition from Brian Foote and Joseph Yoder's original paper on the big ball of mud. These systems show unmistakable signs of unrelegated growth and repeated expedient repair. So I'd imagine those words strike a chord with more than a few of the audience today. For a long time, we've treated Salesforce like a platform where you throw all sorts of stuff in and you keep what sticks until you start breaking limits or treading on another business unit's toes. Some organizations run a center of excellence that applies governance across the whole business. Most don't. And also when an application is taken out of service, often that means just hiding the front end and leaving all the automation and code in place. All that said, for most companies, the happy soup works, and it's often hard to get investment to change the architecture of a system when you aren't changing any functionality. If we do everything perfectly, the users won't notice a thing, isn't the easiest pitch to raise money on. So having covered that, let's find out how org-dependent packages allow us to work hand in hand with the happy soup rather than us having to do a ton of work up front. So to give them their full name, org-dependent packages are actually second generation unlocked org-dependent packages. So first off, the generation side of things. First generation packaging, typically known as managed or unmanaged packages, been around in Salesforce for around 15 years. Source of truth for the package is the developer edition it was created in. All development takes place in that one org, and new versions of the package are uploaded from that org. Now this makes teamwork tricky. You need to make sure all the changes are present and have been merged into that org before you create a new version of the package. And also, if you're working with a namespace, it's really difficult to confirm that it actually works correctly outside of that developer org or outside of an org where you've installed the package. So it's quite unwieldy and it's quite resistant to change. Second generation packaging flips this over on itself. The source of truth is the code and version control. All development takes place in Scratch orgs, or recently it can take place in sandboxes. So every developer can easily work on their own stream. When you create a new package version, that's based on the contents of the local file system, which came from version control. So you can do it out of a continuous integration type machine if you want. And teamwork is achieved via the standard SFDX development model. Even when the package is namespaced, you can still spin up multiple namespaced Scratch orgs. And you can find more information on first versus second generation packaging at the link I've shown there. Next, the unlocked aspects. So org-dependent packages are unlocked, and what this means is the contents of the package can be viewed and changed locally. There's no obfuscation and there's no protection. Again, there's some benefits to second generation unlocked packages compared to their first generation equivalent, the unmanaged package. Unmanaged packages are fire and forget. So once you install them, you've lost control of what happens to that code in that org. The code is available to be changed locally, and also you can't do anything with it. You can't upgrade it to the latest version. If you create a new unmanaged package, the one that you installed is stuck at that version. About the only thing you can do with it once you've installed it is to uninstall all the components in a single operation by uninstalling the package. There's really no more control than that. That said, these used to be a popular way to distribute code on the App Exchange, but it's been a while since Salesforce allowed us to do that. With second generation unlocked packages, the package developer retains some control. So while the code is still available to be viewed and changed in the local org, if you create a new version of the package, you can upgrade the currently installed version. And what this does mean is you have to be a little bit careful around changing the code locally, because if you change it and it's still in the package and the package is upgraded, all your local changes have gone, they've been overwritten. But there is also a mechanism in second generation packages that allows you to migrate components into and out of the package as you agree to hand over control to the happy soup or maybe take it back again. And it's really quite neat. You can kind of move components in and out in particular releases as you so desire. Very cool feature. And finally, the org dependent aspect. So unlocked, unmanaged, managed packages for that matter, they must all be logically complete. So when the package is created, all dependencies must be satisfied in order for the upload to complete. While they can depend on other packages, those packages must already exist and they must be well defined at the point of creation. Because of this, these packages can be installed into any org because they bring everything they need to function correctly with them. Org-dependent packages, on the other hand, are logically incomplete. When you create the package, they can have unsatisfied dependencies. Those dependencies are checked and must be satisfied at package installation rather than package creation time. So because of this, org-dependent packages can only be installed into orgs where the components they rely on are already present. They've been around for a little while. I've been using them for some time, but they haven't been GA, so I haven't been able to use them with customers. But they went generally available in February as part of the Spring 21 Salesforce release, so we're now ready for prime time. And basically, what they allow you to do is build on top of the happy soup. The packages can know intimate details of what's going on in the happy soup implementation, but they don't have to pull any of that into the package and manage it. So it makes packaging available to everyone without them having to completely rework their existing Salesforce implementation. The sweet spot for org-dependent packaging is customers with a mature org. So lots of applications have been built over the years that would be difficult to separate, but you also have an appetite for exerting more control as you carry out new work from this point on. So here's a diagram of the relationship between the happy soup and standalone packages. So these are non-org dependent. The package installs regardless of whether there's a happy soup or what it looks like. They can go into any org. The happy soup typically knows the package is installed. At the very least, there'll be some profiles or permission sets that allow access to the package assigned to the users. More often, the organization code will rely on components like Apex classes, flows, lightning components, so there'll be references to them. But the key point here, package is independent of the org contents. The same package code will be installed into many orgs, and those orgs could be completely differently configured, completely differently licensed. They are standalone. Oh, sorry, I've jumped to right, go back to finish standalone packaging. So I've just finished that one that I was talking about, can be installed into many differently configured orgs. And here's a diagram showing how this changes for org-dependent packages. The package knows details of the happy soup, and it has references to this in its components. The org also knows the package is installed, because again, at the very least, the users will need some kind of permission to access it. Typically, there'll be a bit more reference going in both directions. But the package is dependent on the org contents. If the dependencies are not met at the installation time, the installation of the package will fail. So the screen grab there is an example of where I tried to install it into an org where it didn't have any of the base functionality. And you can see here that there's loads of complaining that I haven't got the things that I need to allow that to install. So moving on to talk about the, sorry, I've jumped ahead one again. This was a slide I wasn't entirely convinced about, but it's in there. Right. So org-dependent packages can be thought of as reaching into the happy soup. For example, to nest a Lightning web component from the org, to access some Apex classes and methods, or to add features to existing objects, such as lookups, which is what I'm going to do in my sample scenario. This dependency is one way, though. So the org cannot refer to components from the package unless the package is installed in the org. Those dependencies have to be satisfied before you can deploy code. So on to the sample scenario. So this is a bookstore application. It's been distributed as unpackaged code for some reason. Maybe it started life as open source metadata on SourceForge, for anyone who remembers when we used to do that with Salesforce. Over time, the requirements have changed, and we've got a bunch of bookstores who just need the standard application, which supports books, authors, and publishers, while others want to run in-person readings by authors, obviously with masks and social distancing, and only once lockdown restrictions are lifted. So in this case, the standard application for all stores is the Happy Soup, and the reading support will be added as an org-dependent package that knows all about and extends the standard application. So the first dependency comes through a Lightning App Builder page that allows searching by author and genre. So the page, which is shown all in green here, that's in the package, while the Lightning component shown in blue to capture the search criteria and display the matching books, they live in the Happy Soup. The package also introduces another component that shows scheduled readings that match the search criteria. So something to note here is that I'm using the Lightning message service to handle the communication of the user-specified search criteria. So what this does is it decouples these components from each other, and it means that the search criteria component in the org doesn't have to worry about which components will listen to that search criteria and execute a search. For example, it couldn't send that information directly to matching readings because it has no idea if matching readings is actually present. That's optional depending on if the package is there or not. The second dependency is at the object level. So I have a custom object named reading in the package, and that has lookups to author and the book objects that only exist in the Happy Soup. And finally, I've got an Apex dependency. I've gone for quite a simple one. My package has some Apex to set up example data that includes readings. But rather than setting up the underlying publisher, author, and book information, I delegate that to an equivalent method in the Happy Soup, shown in blue. So that runs first, sets up those pieces of data, and then I layer some readings on top of it. Okay, so that's enough of me talking over slides. So there's a screen grab here of the book search component, and so let's go and have a look at that and some of the package metadata. Okay, so flipping over to my demo org here. So as you can see in my installed packages, down here, I've got the London's Calling 2021 package. It's got that little thing there because it's unlocked, which shows that, there you go, unlocked installed. And it's currently in beta because I haven't needed to promote this yet. I've just been using this for test purposes. Just one sec while I try and get Zoom to get out of the way. Oh, God, that was unexpected. Right. Next up, we've got my, so I'm in the setup object manager here. Next up, this is my reading object. So you can see here, I've got a lookup to an author and a lookup to a book. Those aren't part of my package, but they do exist in this org, which allowed me to install that package. Then if I flip over, this is my book search Lightning App Builder page. So this is within the package. It has the search criteria that comes from the Happy Soup, the search results, and then the reading results. And if I choose myself and I pick a particular genre that I know I've written a book about, I'm pretty sure detective is one of those. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see we find The Cloud of the Baskervilles and we find Lockdown Looksee. If I go for Dexter Collin and I click that, so if we get no results, we get no results. So that's searching the objects in my package and it's searching the objects in the Happy Soup. So that is the Salesforce org. If I now flip over to Visual Studio Code, so this is the Flexi page. So if I scroll down here, hopefully the text is large enough to be seen. So I've got component instances in here. I've got search criteria. I've got search. I've got reading results. However, if I open up my Explorer, this is in my package metadata, and I scroll down to see, I've only got reading results in there. So the other two dependencies I'm expecting to be spread by where it ends up. I mentioned about having my Apex class to the delegating to the class Happy Soup that creates the bookstore sample data. So here's my create bookstore sample data in my readings class. The first thing that does is it hits bookstore sample data and asks that to create its sample data. Again, if I here, and I go to classes, you'll see I've got bookstore with reading sample data, no bookstore sample data. Again, that's present in the Happy Soup. Just a couple of other interesting things. So this is the bookstore with reading location. This goes to a bunch of tabs, most of which don't exist in my package. The only thing that does is reading_C and book search, but author, book, and publisher to do with me, but I can include those into my application. And the final part, which is also quite interesting, is section group. As an admin of a bookstore that carries out readings, I want the administrator permission set from the standard application, which is publishing admin, but then I also want my readings administrator permission set to be lumped into that as well. So with the advent of permission set groups a couple of releases ago, I've got this bookstore with readings permissions group, and that includes the publishing admin, which I've got in here, sorry, which I haven't got in here, which is in the Happy Soup, and the readings admin, which comes from my package. So if I jump back and start presenting. So that was a quick overview of what I've done there. So the next thing I want to show is the how we get going on this Bickerroom. It's different, and dare I say, it's a slower approach as well. It gives you more control, but you definitely have to allocate a bit more time. Because as the package can be installed without the dependencies being satisfied, sorry, the package being created without the dependencies. Let me say those words again. While the package can be created without the dependencies being satisfied, you can't develop your code that way. All of your dependencies have to be satisfied in the org where you're developing. So basically what you have to do is build your package code inside an org that already has the Happy Soup code present. So to do this, you'll create your Scratch org and deploy your Happy Soup to it, the first couple of steps there. Or if you're if you're developing against sandboxes, you'll just create a new box and that will have the Happy Soup metadata present. Once you have this, which is your representation of production, you need to reset source tracking. Basically, this source CLI, which is what you have to use to create packages, that the code in the org is perfectly in line with the code in your file system. Now, that isn't really the case, but what we're actually telling it is we don't want any of the metadata in the org to be retrieved, you pull back changes in the future. Then you push the package code, assuming you have any already, and then you continue developing it. So what this means is that the package metadata that you will be changing in green sits on top of the Happy metadata that you will not be changing. And the reason you'll be leaving the Happy Soup well alone is that any changes you make in here while you're doing development will be retrieved when you pull the source from the org, and they will end up in there in your packaging metadata. And that's the last thing you want, because all of a sudden you've got two different versions, one in the Happy Soup, one in the package, and you're regularly writing things. This can be a little bit tricky to manage, but you need to make sure you keep any Happy Soup development well away from the package, or you quickly lose control. So keep a very close eye on what ends up in your local file system. If you see something that doesn't belong there, up immediately. The development process for getting your package into your production org is shown here at a high level. The blue squares represent tasks that you carry out via the Salesforce CLI. The first thing you have to do is create a package. So at the code level, it's your Salesforce DX project JSON file with details of the package name and the associated ID. You then carry out your package development, as mentioned in the previous slide. Once you're happy with that, you create a new package version. This will be a beta, and you install that into a new sandbox, which has the Happy Soup metadata present. In development in that, you purely want the Happy Soup in there, and your package should build on top. So your installed package works with the Happy Soup metadata as expected. So this is often where I find my permissions that aren't quite right, or I've missed on a page layout, something annoying like that. If any tests fail, it's back to developing the package again in a separate org. If all the tests pass, then you can promote that package version. That brings it out of beta and makes it appropriate to install into your production environment on top of your real Happy Soup. And finally, you install that package, make any necessary configuration changes to give users access to it. But you can see how the time stacks up a little bit, because every time you want to make a change, you've got to go back, develop the package, then you've got different things to do on top of that. So takeaways and lessons learned. You have to use the Salesforce CLI for this, upskill yourself at your earliest convenience. You need to allow some extra time for developing like this. The whole cycle of develop, create and install the package, test the changes, debug any problems, go back and develop them somewhere else. That whole cycle does add time, especially when you're starting out, because you'll be inclined to make small changes and confirm they work all the way through. So second generation packages are very flexible. but like packages, you have to allow time for them to make their way through all of the sales instances before they become available. And if you do that multiple times a day, it will stack up. And if my experience is anything to go by, a time where you need it to happen quickly, that's when it will take about 30 minutes and you'll be hopping from foot to foot, ready to go. The next couple of points apply more when you are starting this kind of development. So be strict with yourself about separating your package and happy soup development. Otherwise, you'll find them bleeding into each other and you won't know which should live where. Also resist the urge to make to the installed package code when you're testing it. It's really tempting because it's accessible, it's changeable. If you find a bug when you're in your test environment, I'll just go and tweak that. Problem is you often forget to then bring that back into the package and round trip it in the next package version. So what happens is a new version of the package and you lose all those changes or you overwrite them because you forgot about them. As once you've got a bit more experience under your belt, you can get into the habit of making some small change like that. And you'll remember to round trip it because you've been through the experience and the pain of not having that work before. But certainly when starting out, try and keep those as separate as possible and just accept that it is going to take you a little bit longer. Keep a very close eye on your package source. When you're adding to version control, make sure that you only have changes you're expecting. If you see a file that be there, if you see some changes to a file that you weren't expecting, then don't put those in. Because when you're developing your package, the Salesforce CLI is fairly dumb. It doesn't know what lives in your package, what lives in the happy soup. If you change something, it'll just pull that back. So if you haven't been very hard on yourself and you've made some changes to the happy soup, they're going to come back. So what can help you with this is the false ignore file. This is probably going to be your best friend during this kind of development. It is mine for sure. What you'll find is that some of the happy soup files keep coming back. So it might be that you're adding new fields in existing objects. It might be you're making some changes that hit a page layout or something like that. You want to leave it alone, but it keeps coming back. And if you try and delete it, then it tries to delete it from the org. So if you've got something that comes back through a side effect and you don't want it, put the details in the false ignore file. What that means is the CLI will bypass it. Next time you try and push that won't go there. It means you can delete them from your local file system and it won't try and delete them from the org. You expect your false ignore file to grow quite quickly when you first start using all dependent packages because an awful lot of stuff does have a tendency to keep coming back. But the good news is if you're moving to adopt this particular development mechanism, then your false ignore, as long as it's on the same happy soup, applies across all those packages. So you've got a real head start when you move on to your next package. So where to go to find some more information? There isn't a huge amount out there about org-dependent packages right now, probably because it's only just available maybe, and maybe because it's not something that appeals particularly to ISV partners or SI partners. It is more of a customer-specific thing. But the developer guide, that's the Salesforce developer guide, that explains the mechanics and has some additional information about where you should be looking to use org-dependent packages over regular unlocked packages. The sample org from the sample org repo for me, which is the happy soup, that's available on GitHub, and also the extension package is available on GitHub at a separate repo. They've got instructions as to how you can use those if you fancy playing around with that yourself. And while it's not specifically about org-dependent packages, you'll need to understand unlocked packages and how they work in order to make best use of org-dependent packages. So I would advocate definitely doing the Trailhead module for unlocked packages. And this brings me to the end of my session. Once again, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the sponsors. I hope you enjoyed the session.